Yes, 2020 continues to be weird, but we are here anyway. Welcome to the Hockey Podcast. My name is Kevin Olenek. You can follow me on Twitter at KEBOLE. Follow Hockey Podcast on Twitter at podcast_hockey. You can also like the Facebook page, the Hockey Podcast, or subscribe on wherever you get your podcasts, which includes Apple and Spotify. There was a party in Calgary last night as the Pig and Duke has reopened. Chris and Devin, it seems like phase 2 or whatever phase you are in Alberta. Is it phase 2 in Alberta? What phase are you in over there?
As of Friday, we are officially phase 2.
Okay. Oh, okay. So now you can go to the pub and stuff.
Technically, we were allowed to go to the pub in phase 1, but it was, I think, a third of their capacity, and you're only allowed 6 people per table, although 6 people per table is still the thing moving forward, I believe, for phase 2. It's just that they're allowed, I think, half capacity instead of a third.
Ah, okay.
Or something along those lines. I might not have it exactly right, but I think it's the general gist.
Okay. But there was a birthday party type of thing yesterday?
Yes, that is why Sean and Heidi are absent. It was Heidi's birthday last night, and they may have indulged.
Oh, well, happy birthday to Heidi. I had dogs ready even, so, oh well. Maybe we'll put that up later. How are you? Are you okay? Are you awake?
I was a DD, so I'm actually perfectly fine right now.
Ah, okay. Well, there we go. Devin, are you doing okay?
I'm doing all right. It's been a lot of drinking this past week. I was actually looking back on each night, and yeah, so it's been a long week. So I'll be sober for the next little bit here. But last night was fun. Unfortunately, my fiance Kaylin and I had to leave early because we got a phone call from one of our friends in the building saying that our fire alarm's going off. Which when we got home, everybody was out on the street, and so we were like, holy crap. So we ran upstairs, grabbed our pets, and came back out kind of thing. So it was not really what we wanted for the night, but it was fun to celebrate Heidi's birthday with everybody.
And Tyler, how are you?
Good morning, Kevin. I'm all right. Bit of a late night here, and of course we start 1 hour earlier for this show than our friends in Alberta, so... 11 can roll around pretty fast when you've had a good Saturday evening. But I always want to say that my concern for you guys was all ththese pictures of hail and tornadoes I was seeing coming out of Alberta. What the heck was going on there?
Yeah, it was quite the doozy of a storm. Fortunately, like downtown and northwest where we're at, or at least where I'm at, is relatively unscathed. I didn't notice any hail damage, but we definitely had quite a consistent downpour for most of the evening and some light hail. But it looks like Deerfoot flash flooded. I think the northeast got hit pretty bad, and apparently somewhere on the outskirts of the city even got up to like tennis ball sized hail, which is insane.
Wow.
Whoa.
Gee, yeah. Well, it continues that 2020 continues to be the weirdest year ever. So, I guess my question for Heidi is I understand celebrating your birthday, because I do think that that's important. But are you going to take this year? Like, really? I think for all of us for 2020, this year didn't happen. We can celebrate birthdays, but we are the year younger. We're not adding this year. I'm not adding this year into my year. So. Screw that.
So does that mean I get to stay 31 for like 700 and so odd days?
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
Exactly. Yeah, this year has been weird. We'll get into some updates here as a lot has happened in the hockey world, but we did miss Devin and Chris last week, specifically around the announcement about Chris Cuthbert joining Sportsnet, and looking like it sounds like he's at least going to be doing one Stanley Cup final, and the reports are that Cuthbert will be doing the East, or the West, and Jim Houston will be doing the East. And I wanted to start with Devin as the Leafs follower here on our funky little podcast. And the perception that Jim Houston and the Leafs are, he hates the Leafs or doesn't like the Leafs or he's biased towards the Leafs. Have you felt that, or is this just sort of a conspiracy theory?
I think it's a conspiracy theory. I understand the thought process behind it because Houston's mostly done Western Conference games. So I think that it's a bit far fetched. I have noticed that very, very. The only reason why I noticed that he was less enthusiastic with the Leafs is maybe because someone just put it in my head, and now that I'm looking for it, that's the only thing that I can think of. But I personally don't think that that he hates the Leafs.
Okay. So the criticism towards any of the Leafs part is not valid?
I don't think so. No.
Okay. How do you feel? How both of you? Let me start with Chris. How did you feel about the Cuthbert announcement that he's joining Sportsnet?
Yeah, the actual announcement itself, I found was quite shocking. I don't think anyone saw that coming. But that being said, I think it's a big get for Sportsnet to be able to scoop up probably outside of Houston, probably the best play-by-play guy in Canada. So I think it's a big get. It's awesome for him to finally get a chance to do a Stanley Cup final. They're guaranteeing him at least one final in his 4-year contract. And I'm excited to hear him call more hockey.
Tyler, did you have anything kind of come out as you were thinking about this during the week?
It was interesting to hear a little more detail about the contract. He revealed that I believe with CKOM in Regina. For the 4-year deal and at least one Stanley Cup final. I could see it going something like, Houston does it this year, then he does it the next year, and then they kind of just alternate. It's an interesting hire for Sportsnet as far as what we've seen with trends. They've done a lot of cost cutting and moving names out, and now they go and spend some big money to bring in to bring somebody in. So, and then what does that mean? Does it mean less national work for guys like John Shorthouse and Kevin Quinn and those types? So we'll see how it all kind of goes. It'll be, this year's a kind of a difficult way to measure how they'll be used because of the hub cities and COVID, and if it even gets going again.
Right. Yeah. And It almost is win-win, because I really do think TSN has some talent that they're able to kind of bring up and use a little bit more. We talked about that last week, and including Kayla Gray, who we won't talk about, but was in the news this week. So I think it ends up being win-win. I don't know. I still think Houston is closer to retirement than I think people want to admit, but that's just me. It's just my hunch, but we could be wrong.
Well, just on that point there, Kevin, I believe they're only a year apart in age. So,
yeah.
If one's close to retirement, isn't the other? I don't know. Hard to get a sense from those guys as to how they feel about travel at this point. It seems like neither's been shy with travel, but we do hear with other announcers as they get further on, they like to reduce their travel. So we'll see.
Yeah.
This would be one way for both of them to have less travel if Jim does some more Western games.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's the fallout for that will be certainly very, very interesting, because you do have the veterans, and then you do have the long term, like your veterans in Cuthbert and Houston, but you also have your long-term sort of talents in Randorf and Ball and Shorthouse, and that you do need to find work for. And I mean, I more and more I think about it, I could see Rick Ball joining TSN as a possibility as well. So there's some things that will come down the pike as well. But moving on, although this weekend was the first weekend of CFL, the CFL was supposed to play, but they are not. But in terms of hockey, we are now in phase 2, so some players can skate in some places, not everywhere, but I do believe Calgary had skaters. I don't believe Rogers Arena is open yet. The training camp has been agreed upon to start on July 10th. And in terms of the hub cities, there was some interesting things said. I'm going to play a little bit from Bonnie Henry because there appeared to be some confusion this week in Vancouver. But let's hear a little bit from Bonnie Henry.
So I want to talk a little bit about some of the announcements that came out about the NHL. There has been much discussion and commentary about the NHL and the potential to resume the season. But like the Premier and many others, I also think bringing hockey back to BC would be a very good thing. But let me be very clear. There are no exceptions to the rules or the public health guidelines that are in effect here in BC. And in no way will we compromise all the work that we have done and the health of British Columbians for the NHL or any other group. The NHL has provided a proposal for consideration by federal and provincial officials, and we have reviewed that. And let me also be very clear, this is not for today. The proposal is for potential for some time in the future, late summer into the fall. I have reviewed that plan, and it exceeds the requirements that we have in place even today, and it meets our criteria for protecting our community without compromise.
So that was Bonnie Henry talking about, and sorry for I don't know what that sound was that was going on there. But Bonnie Henry's talking about the Vancouver's pitch for the hub city, that was approved. They have submitted that to the NHL. There was a letter from Horgan to Trudeau about the 14-day quarantine, and there is reports from Ryan Rishaug that is going to be adapted so the Canadian cities can remain. But from what I am led to understand is this has almost been a fait accompli. It looks like Las Vegas will be one of the cities, and it looks like Toronto will be the other city. What I find interesting about this is, from what I am led to understand, is that the Eastern Conference teams are going to be playing in Vegas, the Western Conference city, and the Western Conference city are going to be playing in Toronto or the Eastern Conference city. Does that make sense to anybody, or is that weird?
Like, it definitely comes across a little weird at first thought, but when you actually sit down with it and actually think it through, it kind of does make sense. Even though there is not going to be any crowds in the arena, it kind of takes any form of a home advantage away. So I guess I understand it in that context.
That'd be the only reason why I could see them doing it, because it really doesn't make sense otherwise. I mean, certainly for getting all the players back together, like travel reasons. I don't know that one. I have trouble believing that, honestly, but we'll find out, I'm sure, very soon here. But the fact that there's no fans, it doesn't really make a difference. I think where teams are playing, it's there's going to be some odd times on the schedule anyways.
Yeah, 2020 is kind of messed up as it is, so kind of doesn't surprise me that they're doing it, and it does make sense.
I could see them taking the Toronto series and moving that east, like the Toronto-Columbus series, and moving that to Vegas or wherever Western City is. And then I could see the West series moving east. I could see them doing that. I'm not sure I completely logistically understand why you're going to move the entire conference on to the other side of that. That to me doesn't make sense. That almost creates more problems. And if you are I still think, to me, I'm just going to say it. I don't think it should be Toronto. I think if it's going to be Canadian City, I think everything has led to me to believe that it should be Edmonton. I think we've talked about this a number of times. Yes, I live in Vancouver. It'd be great, but I think Edmonton makes the most sense. Wouldn't you, I guess, I don't know, that feels like a more of a logistical nightmare, switching the conferences around, doesn't it? I could see one, but not every. That feels like more work. maybe
it's definitely a lot more travel. I mean, just to get there, I guess. But even if they somehow split up the East and West, like I believe that they don't have to be in the exact same area. Like you could have half of the Eastern Conference teams in Vegas, and then have half of the Western Conference teams in Vegas, and vice versa in Toronto. I don't see why they would have to have specific places for East and West, because no matter what, you're going to be they're going to be playing 3 games a day, it sounds like, and it really doesn't matter at the end of the day, I don't think.
No, I guess not. Not, yeah, I don't know. I just like, if this is about, if this was about quarantine and keeping people safe, that to me is a little weird. But the other part of this, and I know that the NBA has, with their return to play, has talked a lot about this. And I want to, and there was some confusion in Vancouver anyway about this, but I want to play something that Bonnie Henry continued on, and I want to play that part of it.
Teams would have no contact with the public, with no spectators, and no families. So it is the concept that I have said meets our criteria is teams that are in small pods of less than 50, that are in what we would call a household bubble. So it would be very similar to somebody coming back to a household here in British Columbia. They would also be subject to intense screening and testing for the entire time. And it is not just a 14-day period of time. If Vancouver were picked as one of the hub cities, there'd be a period of several weeks, and they would be in this team bubbles for that entire period of time.
I get the bubble. I understand that. But the thing that I think, I wonder, I want to start with Chris on this, because I think maybe Chris will have a different perspective than I do, and I think Chris has been the one that has been a little bit more reserved about this idea than all of us. But I understand even in the first rounds why you would not bring families in. But as this goes on, we're asking, okay, and I understand what we're talking about. The perception is these are millionaires that are playing a kid's game. But there's at least 3 Vancouver Canucks that are going to be fathers this summer. As this goes, as an example, and I'm sure that there's other players around other teams that are going to be fathers as well, or are going to, have like significant family issues that they need to deal with. As this goes on, are you open with some of these teams, like even if they get to the Stanley Cup final or the conference finals, are you open to the idea of bringing families in at some point? Or do we think, let's just keep is it completely fair to expect the players to completely be away from their families for a really long period of time?
And this is probably not going to surprise anyone, but I do kind of see both sides of the argument. Like, I do understand like where the players would be coming from as far as wanting to be able to share this experience with their family, for sure. But I also see where someone like a public health officer like Dr. Henry is being like, well, if we want to maintain the safety of all this, we need to have a strict no family policy. That being said, if I'm willing to bend at any point as far as allowing family to be introduced into it, obviously they'd have to be they'd have to have a very stringent testing for the family coming in, and maybe even having them do like some sort of quarantine. I'm not sure like what exceptions are going to be made in that regard. But if anything, maybe just for the Stanley Cup final, because obviously a lot of players, when they win that championship, their family comes onto the ice and then joins them in the dressing room and takes part in that celebration with them. So I wouldn't really want to rob them of that experience. But at the same time, you kind of have to play this safe rather than sorry. So I get where Dr. Henry's coming from.
Devin, Tyler, what do you think?
I'll jump in. Yeah, I think that it's a hard discussion because obviously you want to keep everybody safe. But I know Nick Foligno was very outspoken about saying like if they don't invite their family, that there will be a problem. And like I mean, I totally understand that because, like Chris said, if they do go, whoever goes to the Stanley Cup final, they want to be celebrating with their family. It's a touchy subject, but I think that it would be impractical to ask the players to be away from their families for that long, especially, like you said, Kevin, you have, 3 Canucks players, let alone, I'm sure, a whole bunch of others that have young families. And it'd be very hard on the players, no matter if you're millionaires or not. These are still people. They still have emotions. And it's, like I said, I just think it's very impractical to even have that thought process. The NHL needs, and the governing bodies, wherever they are going to be stationed, need to have some sort of empathy towards that. And who knows what it's going to look like if the COVID numbers spike in a certain area or anything like that. That might have an impact on whether or not they choose to let the families come too.
Right. That's a big factor in this, of course. Yeah.
I was going to say, there's a lot on the line here for everybody to get this going again. And if that's what's required, the players are going to, maybe some of them begrudgingly accept it, but I don't see, that derailing the whole return to play plan. I mean, they'll go along with the requirements, and then maybe some hope that towards the end of the playoffs, there will be a loosening of the rules that would allow the families to show up. So, that's something that may change as they go.
Yeah,
that's probably the scenario they got to hope for.
Like when you get down to 2 teams for the Stanley Cup final, and all the other teams have gone back to their respective cities or homes at that point because it's the off season for them. To me, it makes a little bit more sense to maybe potentially allow families to be introduced at that point, just because there's less people overall in said hub cities.
Well, and then you're going to have at least one team changing hub cities by the Stanley Cup final, I would assume. So they're going to have to do a whole testing thing, anyways.
Totally, and if they do, well, they're doing 7-game series. If a team's coming from the States to Canada, they're going to have to do that 2-week quarantine anyways. And who knows if their if their husband is going to be, playing in the playoffs at that point either. So there's that logistical hurdle as well.
Yeah. I'm imagining, from what I'm led to understand, that the final will be in the States. The semifinals, the conferences will remain in the same, but the final will be in the American city. But we'll have to see about that as well. But that's a good point. And I was just thinking about that. I'm like, are we going to have to go through a 14-day quarantine again? Yeah. And in terms of training camps, the Flames have announced that they are going to have a training camp in the U.S., and I know the Canucks have talked about it. It's a weird idea in some senses because depending on where you are in the States, the numbers are going up, but at the same time, it almost makes the sense that you're doing a camp in the States. Does it? Feels like it to me. It seems a little bit difficult to do a training camp here in Canada at this point.
Well, it definitely baffles me a bit, because what if I'm sure that they would get a kind of a nod in the right direction, whether or not they're going, the Flames are going to be in the States or I guess Vegas or Toronto if those are the official city hubs, because then they would have to do another 14-day quarantine when they came back in. So to me, that the NHL would have to give each team a indication where they're going to be playing so that they can properly prepare for that.
Yeah, it definitely seems like the riskier approach to me, but at the same time, if the whole point is to basically circumvent Canada's regulations, then I get why they're considering that.
Yeah, they will definitely go wherever they feel like they're going to have the least amount of hassles, no matter how unusual it seems.
Yeah, that makes sense. I get. Yeah, I don't think. I mean, Yeah, I think that will be an interesting idea going forward. Devin, do you know what the Leafs are doing? Because I know that Dubas was telling the players to come back as soon as possible.
I would assume that they, I really don't know officially. I would assume that they would either stay in Toronto or they go down to Buffalo or something like that to do their training camp. But I've no indication which way.
Fair, that's fair. And in terms of, we'll kind of get into some of the players now. We can actually talk some actual hockey, not logistics. The Canucks announced their Black Aces. Is there anyone, which included DiPietro, Olli-Juolevi, a few, I'll get those up there, but was there anyone in the Black Aces that you guys were like, I could see them making an impact, or Chris or
I think that their depth is already pretty good, especially now that they're mostly healthy. Like I think like guys like Rafferty or maybe Tevez, heck, even maybe a Berchi, like would be able to have some impact if they're given the ice time. But if the Canucks have a healthy roster, I'm not sure if they're going to get many opportunities to even get into the lineup.
Yeah, I don't have much opinion on the Black Aces because they're really just there for practicing if there's no injuries that come up. So
Corey Hergott, who was on Canucks Clay's YouTube, mentioned the possibility he could see Juolevi playing a little bit. He saw some tremendous progress enough that you could see if defense was an issue, if there was an injury, that you could see Olli-Juolevi possibly playing.
Yeah, like I'm open to him being like a 7th, 8th defenseman, but I'm not sure how much ice time he'll actually end up seeing if the Canucks end up playing any sort of significant amount of time.
I mean, a guy going in that has no career NHL regular season games seems a bit far-fetched to me, but he's there.
Although there is the Cale Makar sort of.
Yeah.
Do we want to? I didn't put this on the agenda, but I'll toss this up because we did discuss this in a little bit in the chat. The Makar Hughes debate and the Markstrom debate. The NHL writers had some opinions on them. I know Chris and Tyler. I know Chris especially felt that they were a little low. I guess first of all, let's start with the Makar Hughes Rookie of the Year debate, because it's really going to come down to one of the two. Where are you seeing Hughes going to win this, or?
Like, to me, it's been pretty neck and neck most of the season. Like, one has led the other for a short amount of time before the other one sort of takes over. But overall, I'd say it could really go either way. But as far as my lack of faith in bias to like being towards the American, the player playing in the American city, I feel like it's probably going to go to Makar, even though I feel like Hughes might deserve it. But I'm also biased as well, so there's that.
Yeah, that's a flip of the coin thing to me as well. I don't think that Quinn Hughes has been lacking attention purely out of playing for a Canadian team. I think there's been pretty good hype for both of them there. I think one thing that may move the needle for people a little bit is the fact that, as it was mentioned earlier, Cale Makar came in for Colorado's playoff run there last year. So, I don't know if that has people kind of defaulting to him as the more impressive of the two rookies.
I would agree. I think that I think Makar has a bit more to base off of because of that reason there that Tyler said of playing the playoffs. But I think, as I remember, Makar actually got injured for a bit there and during the season, as Hughes, I believe, has been healthy throughout the entire year. So I don't know. I would if I was voting, I'd vote for Hughes. just because of his impact on the Canucks as a whole. He's totally, I feel like, made their power play more dynamic, and his defensive play is amazing. So I'm not discounting Makar, but I feel like Hughes has done a better job throughout it all.
I did that award. I could actually see ending up being a tie, because I think there's a legitimate argument for both of these guys, and just I think both of them have been fantastic. So I would actually vote a tie. But I'm going to be Chris and vote a tie. The one that I think is a little bit more fascinating is the NHL.com ranked the top 16 goalies in the playing in the Stanley Cup qualifiers. And the top 5, number 1 is Tuukka Rask, number 2 Andrei Vasilevsky, number 3 Connor Hellebuck, number 4 Jordan Binnington, number 5 Ben Bishop. A Mr. Markstrom did not make the top 10. Is Markstrom underappreciated nationally?
Like, at least to me as a Canucks fan, and seeing how good Markstrom has been the past year or so, I feel like he's definitely underappreciated and undervalued by American writers who typically spend most of their time watching Eastern games. That being said, like, I'm not saying that he should be in the top 5, but I feel like at 13th out of 16th, he's being disrespected.
Who were the other? Sorry, I just only got the screenshot here. Who were the bottom 3 on that?
I don't have the list in front of me right now, but I can try and pull it up.
I'll pull it up too. This is some good podcasting there. If you're listening to this podcast and you're wanting to study how to do a podcast, this is not how you do it.
The challenge with this is that you look at the 12 names ahead of Markstrom and you say, well, who's clear-cut not as good as Markstrom? Like, there's a lot of good goalies around. That's I think it's too low as well, but at the same time, like, there's some pretty good competition there amongst goalies.
Okay, so I have the list here. It's Darcy Kemper, Bobrovsky, and Robin Lehner that are below him. But to me, it's not necessarily who's below him that I take issue with. It's more so the 3 that they put in front of him. The 3, basically the rookie goalies, Elvis Merzlikins, Tristan Jarry, and Carter Hart.
Yeah, and like Jarry I could see maybe being up there, but not those other 2. I don't know.
I feel like they just get the advantage of being watched more often by these American Eastern-based writers.
The one thing I will say about Carter Hart is that team in front of him, I don't know if he needs to be absolutely spectacular for the Flyers to go on. I think the Flyers are like a legitimate dark horse in the East. That team is really talented. I don't think a lot of people are taking that team seriously. So I could see Carter Hart making a bit of a run. The other 2, yeah, I certainly agree with that they shouldn't be with Markstrom. But I think the one thing that I do think with Markstrom, needs to be at least a second star, one of the top 3 for sure best players on the Canucks for them to keep going where they are.
For sure.
Yeah.
Which I think is where, and Markstrom, I mean, you can argue the same with Carter Hart, but, Markstrom doesn't have any playoff experience.
Which is probably why they gave him that low of a ranking, but at the same time, some of these rookie goalies that they placed just before him are above him, so who knows?
I don't really have a...
I'm with
you on the other ones. I think they have Bobrovsky too low, and I think as well. He beat the Lightning last year, did he not? So in 4 games. So I don't know. I don't know. I think they have him pretty low as well. But
well, with Bobrovsky, he hasn't had a good year. He's been he signed that huge contract going down to Florida, and done pretty much nothing to help that team at all. So I'm not too surprised at that. But I do agree. I think having Carter Hart, Jari, and Merzlikins above Markstrom, it doesn't make sense to me either.
Yeah. I don't know. I've never been a big, permission to speak candidly, I've never been a big fan of the NHL.com rankings. They feel a bit over Eastern analyzed. Like, I don't feel like they do a lot of West. I don't know if they watch Western hockey, or maybe their bedtime is 10 o'clock Eastern, and that's it. And we go to bed, and we don't, but they need to do a better job on the West side. For sure.
I especially agree in that regard when they have a Scott Burnside doing those lists, because to me he's especially biased towards the East.
Yeah.
But, this is, I think, a bit of a good thing for Markstrom, though. I mean, he's a goalie that already plays with a kind of a chip on his shoulder, and he'll definitely have that now.
Yeah, for sure.
That's fair. Yeah.
The Flames, the more I think it was Heidi that brought this up, but the more I think about it, I'm not sure where the Flames are going to go in the playoffs. Because I think that there's a legitimate argument to go either way with Rittich or Talbot. I mean, Rittich is the guy that they have been anointing as the number one, and I think this is an important playoff for him. But you do have a guy in Cam Talbot that has won a playoff series, almost won another playoff series against Anaheim. I don't know, Devin. Are you convinced it's going to be Rittich to start, or could you see an argument for Talbot?
I definitely see an argument for Talbot. He's proven to be a number one. Granted, it was only a year, and he played really well with in New York, backing up again with Lundqvist. But it really could go either way. I think that they will start with Rittich, give him a chance, and if he falters, it's kind of good that we do have Talbot to back us up as a 1B. It really could go either way, but I wouldn't be surprised if Talbot started, but I think they're going to go Rittich.
Christian Tyler, what do you think?
That was kind of my feeling as well, is that they probably will tap Rittich, just because, like you suggested, he does kind of seem to be the anointed one. And Devin and or Heidi, when she hears this, can tell me I'm wrong if they so choose. But I kind of feel like Cam Talbot is kind of in a similar situation as like Corey Schneider, where they excelled as a backup, got this reputation that they're a pretty darn good goalie, but then when given the full opportunity of being a number one, they aren't able to fully seize the opportunity and have a lengthy number one goalie sort of career. They end up just kind of being like that middling 1A, 1B sort of choice.
The only thing about this for me is that Cam Talbot, got a run as a starting goalie with Edmonton a few years ago, and Rittich still doesn't have that experience. But if it were, from my perspective, Rittich's the guy that got the Flames this far. He's been the guy mostly. So I think you gotta lean in that direction. Say, yeah, you got us this far, but we're gonna go with the other guy now. Like, that's a bit. I don't know. If the coaches would be keen on taking that approach, but in terms of playoff experience, Cam Talbot certainly got the edge.
For sure, and I think the other thing we need to think about is how fiery Rittich can be, and I think that would be kind of more of a boost for the Flames, having him in net and having his personality show, and it might help the Flames kind of get into playoff mentality, because jumping right in is going to be really interesting to see how each team really adapts to having been off since March. So I think having that personality in net and having that fire with Rittich will benefit the Flames.
It's one of those two where I think, like, in this best of five, it's not a best of 7, it's a best of 5, being that you really want, you don't want to go down 0-1. Like, I think that game 1 is more important in a 5-game series than a 7-game series, simply because there's 2 less games and you're kind of put behind the 8 ball. And if Rittich drops the ball and you have to go back to Talbot, that creates a bit of a struggle for the Flames in my mind. That's the one thing. But I guess, yeah, we will see, because I think that Winnipeg-Calgary series, out of any of the series, to me, I think is the one that I think is going to come down mostly to goaltending, because I think the better goaltender will win that series. If it's Hellebuyck or Rittich or Talbot, will win that series to me. So
yeah, I think that's a great point you make there, Kevin, with the best of 5 series. You'll see that sometimes in playoff runs where the first game goaltending not great, they get another shot the second game, and then there's some thought given to changing goalies. But it could just be 1 or 2 bad periods in game 1, and that'll be it. There isn't a lot of runway to work with there in a best of 5 series.
Yeah, and another thing to think about is that Rittich is actually skating over in the Czech Republic and is able to take pucks and be on the ice, and Talbot's here, so he's not been able to get out there until recent, or I guess it was this week. So I think that's another tick towards going Rittich.
Yeah. For the Flames part, we'll get back to the Canucks here in a quick second here, but Giordano, Stone, Jankowski, Dubé, Phillips, and Reeder were among the Flames that were skating. Michael Ferland is expected to be skating in Manitoba, and there was talk of a possibility he could be ready to play if needed for this series against the Wild. Chris and Tyler, where are you on that? Are you where do you see Ferland as a fit, or are you a little nervous about this because of his concussion history?
Like, at least for me, I feel like because of how the last time they tried to introduce him back into the lineup went, I feel like they're going to be a lot more hesitant this time around as far as giving him that opportunity. And it kind of also goes back to my other point about, like, when they have a fully healthy lineup, they've kind of made do without him. So I'm not sure if they're going to just give him that opportunity game 1. Maybe, like, if he really excels in practice or something like that, and they think that he can really bring that spark like he did in the 2015 series when he was still a Flame. Like, if he can bring something like that, then I think they might give him that opportunity. But I think that they're probably going to take the more cautious approach.
I'm nervous about it. I would hope they take a cautious approach as well. I mean, the guy's career is at stake here right now. But they have the benefit of a training camp and a couple of exhibition games. They'll have a pretty good feel for where he's at by the time the games really count. But if I had to put money on it now, I don't think he's part of their lineup for the first game.
He needs to be 100% in order for him to play his proper game, and for his career's sake, because Tyler's right, his career is on the line. If they did it properly, I'd see him starting on the 3rd line, and if he excels there, and then he can get promoted throughout the game, or maybe next game, depending on how well the Canucks are clicking. But yeah, he needs to be 100%. He can't be 99% there's too much risk involved.
Yeah.
Right now, I kind of feel like he's in a Jeff Skinner in Carolina sort of situation where I actually fear for his career and even just life after hockey because of just the amount of concussions in a short period of time.
Yeah. And he's going to be a guy that it's Ferland's game. This is he's going to want to muck it up in the corner, and he's going to want to get intense, and he's going to want to do all of the things that he's known for. And that's the part that I'm really nervous about, is because of the way that this playoff, it's just, I agree with you, Tyler, that there's the opportunity we're going to see where he is. But at the same time, those exhibition games are not going to be as intense as these playoff games. And that's what makes me nervous is, okay, Ferland may look okay in exhibition, and then you put him in an intense playoff situation, and he does what he's known for and how he needs to play to be successful, and it's a setback. That's what really nervouses me for Ferland.
Yeah, but I mean, he could play the exhibition games and not look good, and then they have a pretty clear cut answer there as well.
Yeah, that's true.
But I definitely could see that scenario unfolding that you laid out there.
Yeah,
and the role he plays complicates it as well, because like all it takes is one hit that he wasn't prepared for or ready for, and he could be back to square zero with another concussion.
Yeah,
like another thing, going back to my Jeff Skinner thing, like at least he's like a goal scoring forward, whereas Ferland's more of your like physical power forward hitting sort of type. So it makes it a lot more difficult for him to be able to excel at that. Sorry, Devin.
No, it's all good. Even him at 100%, you never know what type of game he's going to play, because after that 2015 series, he solidified himself as a bit of a bruiser, has a hell of a slap shot, and he can definitely be a game changer. But during his last couple of years with the Flames before he got traded to Carolina, he was not that same guy. He was not mucking it up in the corners, and he was at 100% then. So I think he needs to be that guy, to be that game changer, and to help the Canucks succeed. So even if he is 100%, he needs to be playing the right way.
Yeah, and it was a marked difference when he was playing with a Monahan and a Goodrow, and when he was playing on the third line. That was one of my big criticisms with Ferland. Ferland was great on the top line, but if you moved him down, he wasn't as effective. And I don't know if that was partial team or that was partial effort. I don't want to get into that, but it certainly was not he's not a guy that you can move up and down the lineup. Like, you need to give him line mates, and if he's effective with those line mates, you need to keep him with those line mates.
You need to find that chemistry for sure.
Yeah. Is there anything else that we need to talk about?
Your agenda there was quite lengthy. I feel like we're missing a few things, but
yeah, I'm scrolling through it right now.
I'm going through this, but I feel like we've covered a bunch of this stuff, though.
Yeah, I think the only thing that we didn't necessarily talk about that was written down in the agenda was the comments from Patrick Kane.
Yes. Yes, Patrick.
Other than that, I think we covered everything.
Okay. Do we want to we can talk about that? Patrick Kane is basically saying nothing. Basically what Patrick Kane is saying is nothing has been agreed upon here, and we need to kind of hold our horses here in terms of getting excited. And that sort of was leading to where I was kind of going in terms of having the families there. But I guess maybe the bigger question in all of this too is, as we're going through this, are we kind of taking advantage of the players and just expecting them to do whatever is best for everyone without really thinking about what they're thinking about? Like, have we taken the player, like if a player is diabetic, if a player, is asymptomatic, if a player has decided, I don't want to play, like, are we taking that into consideration here? Or are we just going balls to the walls hoping that we get hockey back?
I think there's a contingent of both. Like, I feel like the majority of the fan base for the NHL is going to be understanding that these are human beings that have families, that have pre-existing conditions that might make them more vulnerable. Like, I totally feel for a guy like Max Domi, who's a type 1 diabetic and is going to be a lot more vulnerable to something like COVID than any other regular healthy hockey player. So, like, I personally wouldn't take any issue if a certain player wanted to withdraw, but I'm not sure if the NHL fan base as a whole would be as agreeable to that as I am.
I'm not sure we're there yet. Like once July the 10th rolls around and it starts to feel a lot closer with camps going and everything like that. Then if you get a player coming out and saying something, we'll see what the reaction is. Right now, I think, most people are just waiting to see some progress as opposed to getting too far into it. But I appreciate Patrick Kane's comments. It's meaningful when it comes from a star player, to hear that, well, just hang on a second here, like there is a lot of hype already being generated just with what Gary Bettman put out a few weeks ago. And the players still have to be on board.
Yeah, as fans go, you are really excited to get things back going. You want it done tomorrow, but I think with if this happened back in let's say the 80s or 90s, players were more do this because it's a team sport. Now I see them more as independent contractors, which they are, and they're becoming more opinionated on what they need to do as a person and what's best for themselves, not so much what's best for the team. So there will be players that will not feel comfortable getting back at it. And if they don't feel comfortable, then, I think the NHL will need to step in and be like, hey, okay, well, what don't you feel comfortable about? And we'll change it. I feel like we are maybe getting a bit ahead of ourselves because I'm fully expecting this season to happen. The play-in series and the playoffs. So, if it doesn't happen, this can be a big letdown and be a bit of a black eye for the NHL because they've come out and set dates and they want to go forward with it, obviously. But I feel like it's good to temper expectations and just in case that does happen. Hopefully, it doesn't. But good on Patrick Kane for speaking out.
One of my huge concerns, though, is, there's a bit of touchiness to this, but we know that teams are very secretive about injuries during the playoffs. We know that there are players that will play incredibly hurt during the playoffs. That's just part of the mentality of the National Hockey League player. What concerns me is if a player is tested positive or has COVID and nothing is mentioned. That is my huge concern. Because if that happens, I think that is just only going to lead to disaster. But I could, there are players that have quietly played through a concussion and have said nothing. I'm just really worried that there could be a player that decides to do that.
Yeah, and there's not going to be, the heavy presence of media around the rink like you'd normally get at this time of year. So as far as, some investigative reporter doing some sniffing around about this, it could very easily be buried, I think, under the way it's going to go here.
Maybe I'm the optimist as far as the enforcement from the health officials side of things, but I feel like they're going to be more on top of this than they would be in a regular situation. And that if there is anyone who tests positive, that it would automatically be made public right away. But maybe I'm just have too much faith in the system. I don't know.
Yeah, the thought process is definitely there for the potential of someone not speaking up or a team not disclosing that, but I'm with Chris on that. I think there would be a lot. I just don't think that actually happened. I feel like there'd be a lot of legality that'd be thrown into that as well. Yes, you want to win the Stanley Cup, but you're putting your fellow hockey players at risk and their families at risk too. So I feel like that would. I don't think it would happen.
Okay. It would be a PR nightmare if it went sideways.
Totally. Oh, for sure. For sure.
Yeah, lest we forget the Rudy Gobert thing there in basketball, right? And how that the ripple effect that occurred, once he tested positive.
If that doctor doesn't come out, Lord knows where we are right now.
Yeah, no kidding.
On a societal level, not just sports.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's, I don't know. That's the part that kind of it concerns me a little bit. That I'm not saying that team could hide, but I hope that there are some consequences to teams if they do. Like, this is the strategy is around, okay, revealing COVID. I think it's important, but other injuries, I think that has to still. I think there still has to be a bit of privacy from that too. So, and yeah, the fact that the media is not going to be like. There may be some media there, but there's not going to be the investigative journalism that we would expect from some of the better reporters that are not going to be there. And I mean, I guess that idea, maybe we'll just quickly close off with this. This idea of having hockey being called from a monitor as opposed to the press box or up top or in between the benches. What do you think of this? I mean, obviously there's a safety portion to this. I did hear Jim Fox say yesterday in an interview on Sportsnet that he was suggesting that there's going to be teams actually considering doing this permanently. That they're not going to have road games the play-by-play announcers will not travel with the team.
I think that's been kicked around a little bit for radio. I don't know about TV broadcast, but for radio, yeah, that could be interesting. I mean, there's been games called off monitor before. There's been games over in Europe where they don't travel people over for the couple of games and they manage. So, I mean, you won't get as good a broadcast, but it's something that they can defend as safe.
And yeah, I totally get the safety argument, but the traditionalist in me just does not like that. Like, I don't see, if there's no crowd there, why can't the broadcast team still be directly line of sight being able to watch and call the game? To me, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, one of the things I'm uncertain of is, is the whole thing play-in exhibition games, everything just going to be a strictly Sportsnet /NBC thing, or are they going to let the regional rights holders get in on the play-in rounds and such like that? Because like normally, even in the U.S., the local broadcasters get to carry their team's games in the first round. So that's what I want to know, because if they're allowing that to be part of the picture here, then yeah, they're going to have to not have people in the buildings because there's going to be too many different people involved. But if it's just strictly, let's say for Sportsnet, they have 3 crews working in the one hub city and 3 in the other or something like that, then it's pretty contained that way. But I don't know, if you start involving every local broadcast out there that's part of the 24, then it's gonna, I don't think they can manage that.
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I totally didn't think of that ahead of time, and I have nothing to add.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would think, because Fox Sportsnet, for example, has a lot of the regional rights for U.S. teams. Like, I'm sure that they're trying to find some way to get some games on their air and, recover losses. I'm sure the league's trying to, work with them on that.
Totally. As far as calling a game from a monitor, I feel like you'd have to have some sort of delay between what they're looking at and what's being broadcast. But yeah, the traditional in me is just I want to say that, like, well, what's basically 3 more people. You have your commentator, color commentator, and technician that's going to be setting up all the stuff, all the equipment. So I don't see why that would be an issue. It's just. But, I don't know. Maybe it'll be flawless. Maybe we won't even know. But now that we do know, maybe we'll be looking for some sort of error or something along those lines. But as far as regional broadcasts go, I feel like they would have to. I feel like they would have to, help the smaller companies out. So, yeah, that's a great question, Tyler.
Actually, I just wanted to quickly jump in. Devin brought up a great idea about the delay thing, because I forget where I read it, but they definitely are going to be heavily considering the delay just for the censorship, because with no crowd noise, we all know how much hockey players like to swear. And we know that the FCC is not a fan of that. So, yeah, I think a delay is definitely going to be on the table for these playoffs.
I don't think it's off the table yet that there won't be pumped in noise because the issue is just if depending on how they shoot the game, if you see a lot of the empty seats and then you're hearing crowd noise, that's just unnatural. Yeah. So I don't know how they would get around that. But I think you do have to have the crowd noise. There's so much barking that goes on in a hockey game. I mean, that. You can't just ask them to flip a switch and play nice out there. Like that's not gonna happen. It's been fascinating this weekend seeing live golf coverage, and there's no spectators there, and suddenly you're picking up a lot more stuff that you wouldn't normally hear. I mean, right away, I think a half hour into it, Jim Nantz was apologizing for an F-bomb, and so we talk about how that's being produced. Well, Jim's the only commentator on site. I think they got a couple people roaming the field, but he's the only guy up in the 18th tower, and normally, there's like 5 of them up there. Him and a couple analysts and a couple of producers and stuff. So. So that I know all of the sports broadcast industry is watching to see how CBS pulls that off because golf's already the most difficult one to put together in terms of logistics, and there's a lot of lessons to be learned there for other leagues.
I'm thinking, I've been wondering about the in-between benches idea, and I actually think legitimately, even in the empty arena, I think that there's a logic for it because that would be the one place that you can at least, the bench shout, the players chirping at each other. That's where a lot of that language is going to be. You are going to want to have someone at least holding the mute button there, if not analyzing the game from there. But yeah, I still that part I think is interesting as well.
Totally. I know this would never happen, but I would love to see an alternative stream, just with full blown just letterbuck. I think that'd be amazing. But the NHL would never let that happen. That'd be fun though.
I fully endorse that so much.
Yeah, and not just chirping between players. I think where the NHL would really have some reservations would be interactions with the officials. That's one that they're going to put the clamp on for sure.
Totally. And I guess the other thing is that how many fights are there going to be? Not having the crowd noise to really amp up a fight or something like that. I don't know. It's going to be super interesting to witness.
It almost seems to me like this is almost, I may have said this before, this is almost the opportunities for the Marchands, the Kachucks, the Tom Wilsons of the world almost will be less effective, and the Gaudreaus of the world may be more effective because the crowd isn't in there. It almost may switch how this game is played.
Yeah, I think it'll definitely have an interesting effect. No one really knows how it'll affect before we end up watching it, but yeah, it's interesting to hypothesize for sure.
Yeah. For sure. Is there anything else we need to cover?
No, I think we covered it all.
I have to... we were better without Tangent Commissioner here than we were with Tangent Commissioner.
Shots fired.
No! Oh, no.
I think I took us on at least a couple very short tangents.
I did.
We got back on the highway fairly quickly there. We took the loop road.
Yes.
Maybe it's because Bearded Canuck's not here, but who knows?
Oh, some shots were fired.
Well, Chris got a lot more words in this time. We'll say that.
Yeah. Sean not being here definitely gives me more of an opportunity to speak my mind.
Poor Sean and Heidi. We do love you, Sean and Heidi. We do.
Are we live? Is this thing live?
Hello?
Listening in.
So how do we follow everyone?
I am at Schneids on most social media.
And I'm at T-Noble, T-N-O-B-L-E on Twitter.
I'm Gordhouse09 on Twitter.
How many followers do you have?
I lost a couple, but then I gained a couple, so I'm still at 14.
All right, next
We'll
week.
get them 20 by the end of the year.
Yes, 20. Yes, 20 by July. Actually, 20 by the end of this month. We're bumping this up.
And I would hope so. I'm 2020 for 20.
Yeah,
let's do it.
Yes. KEVOLE. Of course, subscribe to the Hockey Podcast wherever you get your podcasts, and as well Facebook, Twitter, etc. And Sean and Heidi, we do love you. Happy birthday to Heidi. And we will talk to you all soon. Bye for now.